Hi everyone. Okay, this week we are going to be focusing on interpersonal theories. So let's get started. The first theory that we are going to go over is cognitive dissonance theory. For this very brief PowerPoint, what I want you to do is go to our course Canvas page, find the week or the page that we're on for this week, and as you listen to this, make sure that you have pulled up, printed, or downloaded the attitude worksheet and behavior worksheet. Again, they can be found on our page for this week, and we'll be using those as we talk about cognitive dissonance. So we're actually going to start off with the attitude survey document, okay? So if you have that on your computer, go ahead and take a look at it, or if you have it printed, take it out. And the first thing I want you to do is to go ahead and take the attitude survey. For those of you who might be having trouble locating it, you can simply answer the following 5 questions from the document with yes or no. Okay, so first, here's the directions on the attitude survey. Please indicate whether or not you agree with the following statements by circling the appropriate answer. Number 1, yes or no. Texting while driving is dangerous. Number 2, it is important to stay informed about proposed legislation that affects my community. Yes or no. Number 3, soft drinks or sodas are unhealthy. Yes or no. Number 4, poverty is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. Yes or no. And number 5, smoking is an unhealthy behavior. Yes or no. So again, if you were following along on your own worksheet, hopefully you circled yes or no. If you were not able to find or download or print the worksheet, you could simply write your responses to those questions in your notes. Now I want you to think about, was there a particular question that stood out to you? Maybe the one about smoking or texting while driving, maybe the one about soft drinks. Why do you think that it stood out? Take a moment to reflect. Which, if any of the 5 questions that I talked about or that I mentioned, would you consider the most important and why? Understanding a little bit more about our attitudes around these topics will help us then gain a little bit more understanding and insight into our behaviors. As a follow-up to the activity, or rather a part 2 to the activity, we'll now be taking a look at the behavior survey, that second document. Okay, so on the behavior survey, it asks you to do the following. Please indicate whether or not you personally have performed each of the following behaviors by circling the correct response. Number 1, I text when I am driving. Yes or no. Number 2, I am able to name at least one bill affecting my community that was passed in the last year by legislators in my county or my state. Yes or no. Number 3, I drink soft drinks or sodas. Yes or no. Number 4, within the last year, I've donated money or engaged in volunteer work to address the problem of poverty. And finally, within the last year, I have smoked a cigarette. Now here's how to score. Answers that evoke a feeling of dissonance, assuming that you answered yes on the attitudes survey, get a point. So in other words, you get 1 point if you answered yes to number 1, 2, no, yes on 3, no on 4, and 5 on yes. Yes on 5. There you go. Now, if you have to go back and rewatch that, please do. But essentially, the scoring functions, again, I'll repeat it, where you get a point anytime that feelings of dissonance were evoked. So what is dissonance then? Why am I getting points if my behaviors align with my attitude? Well, here's a definition of cognitive dissonance. In 1957, Fessinger came up with the theory of cognitive dissonance, which suggests that every one of us has an inner drive to hold our attitudes and beliefs in sync, basically in harmony with one another to avoid disharmony or what is considered dissonance. Now, according to the theorist, we hold many different cognitions or attitudes, ideas, opinions about the world and about ourselves. But when those opinions or attitudes clash with our actual performed behavior, there's a discrepancy there. Something isn't quite right. That results in a state known as cognitive dissonance or tension. So we can think about it like this. Smoking is bad, but if you've ever smoked, then you knew you were doing something quote unquote bad for your health. In that moment, then, where your attitude about something and your behavior enacted out when they clash, then it's uncomfortable, right? So there's this feeling of discontent, discord, discrepancy, and again, the theorists call that cognitive dissonance. Because that experience is typically unpleasant, we are motivated then to reduce that cognitive dissonance or to eliminate it completely and achieve that state of consonance or, in other words, agreement, right? So this is kind of the put your actions where your mouth is sort of connotation. This is the don't just say it, show it, or prove it. And it's really this idea that sometimes our actions don't actually align with our spoken commitments or our values and words. So here's some things that we can stop and consider then. When you think back to those 5 questions, right, about texting, legislation, drinking soft drinks, poverty, and smoking, did you experience any cognitive dissonance? Right? So do you have a certain attitude about it, but then your behaviors maybe aren't consistent with that attitude? What thoughts were going through your head as you completed the behavior survey, one answer at a time, if you ended up finding that any of your answers were in fact incongruent with your attitudes? When that happened, what was your emotional affect, or basically emotional response or reaction to that particular question in the exercise? And then here's where the theory really plays itself out. What strategies did you find yourself using to try to lessen that cognitive dissonance experience? Now, the reading for the week talks much, much more deeply about the experience of cognitive dissonance and the various strategies that humans use to reduce the experience of cognitive dissonance. For example, rationalizing. Well, I don't smoke. I only smoke when I drink. Or, well, I don't text and drive unless it's an absolute emergency, then what am I supposed to do? So rationalization or providing justifications for one's actions as being inconsistent with their values are one of the many strategies listed. I'll let you go ahead and read the article to find out the other strategies that we use in efforts to reduce our cognitive dissonance. And I'll bet you could even guess a few. So now, how does this contribute or relate to your project? For some of you, you are doing interpersonal or one-on-one, one-to-one communication projects, right? Where you're looking at the communication between 2 and only 2 individuals, hence interpersonal communication. What you might end up finding is that sometimes there are certain behaviors that are simply not consistent with what you know an individual's attitude or expressed attitude or opinion to be. That would be a time when you could definitely connect this theory to your project. Again, I encourage you to read through the article to find other connections and strategies, and let me know if you have any questions. That wraps up our video on cognitive dissonance.